What's up everyone, it's Roman here, and today we are going to be going over how to identify your strengths and weaknesses and capitalize on your strengths. I want to explain the concept of appreciative inquiry. Now, appreciative inquiry, what it is to better explain it, think about if you had a company. And let's say that 92% of your customers were completely satisfied. They loved your company, they loved your business, and let's say that 8% were not. For whatever reason, they were just completely not liking it, they hated your business, whatever it was, right? So, the normal mentality to solve this problem is that there's a problem, right? That they identify a problem and they focus on fixing that problem, right? Now, that would mean taking the 8% and analyzing them and seeing what is it that they don't like that we can go ahead and improve on, right? Not necessarily a bad perspective, right? But a different way of thinking about it is with the perspective of appreciative inquiry. Now, with appreciative inquiry, you instead look at the 92%. The 92% that you're doing so well with, you look to see what is it that you're doing so good at, and you enhance it. You focus on it and you capitalize on it. Now, the reasoning you do this is because, one, not only are you reinforcing the things that you're already either talented in or you're doing great at, so you get to really excel at and you get to reach your toppest potential within that category, but in that theory, with appreciative inquiry, by you focusing on the good things that you're doing, right? Not only does it dilute all the bad things, but it also reinforces that sense of accomplishment, right? So you feel like you are achieving more, right? So it has a psychological benefit to it as well. Alright, so we are going to be learning how to, of course, identify our strengths and weaknesses, but our main priority will be our strengths, because that is what appreciative inquiry thought process really looks at, is capitalizing on that. So, of course, your weaknesses, you're not going to completely forget about them, they just won't be the highest priority. So the first thing that you want to do to be able to better assess your weaknesses and your strengths is, one, really just start to ask yourself questions. Be aware of situations that have came up in the past. Also, just moving forward, also be aware of how you react in certain situations. Also question how you feel in certain situations and what your thought process is, right? Notice that and just be aware of it. By you being aware of it, you start to identify, this is something that I may do very well. This is something that I'm doing very poorly, right? Just start to be more aware. Awareness is very, very key when it comes to improving yourself. Properly distinguish what your strengths are with your weaknesses, and your weaknesses would be to ask yourself some questions. Here are a couple that I would recommend asking. One is, what am I good at, right? Plainly, sometimes you may already know what you're good at, right? And really think about it for a moment, right? What is something that people have given me compliments about in the past? Okay, what is even something that people have helped me with in the past that I could improve on, right? Think to yourself, what is it you've needed assistance in the past, and really reflect on that. So another thing to ask yourself is, what are the things that give me the most power, and what are the things that drain my energy? Really ask yourself this, because this is very important. If you notice that you do not like being in a cubicle and it's very draining, try to spice things up. For me, I find that I work best when I am with nature, when I am outside. So that's actually why I am outside and I'm recording behind this really beautiful, magnificent tree. And because it's so vibrant, I feel the energy, I feel a sense of power, I feel like I, myself, am being pushed forward by being outside. So that's why I utilize my environment to my advantage. I think to myself, what fills me up, and I make sure to put myself in those situations so I can give my absolute best. Another thing that I would even recommend asking yourself is, what are things that you yourself like to do? What are your hobbies, right? Oftentimes, people underestimate the things that they do as a hobby and how can utilize them in all aspects of life. It is a skill set that you are developing, that you are able to use that in other aspects of your life. So really think to yourself on what type of hobbies you like and what are you interested in, what is it that you feel like can be most beneficial to learn, and really try to incorporate also other things that can help enhance your life. And now, after you have gave an honest assessment on your strengths and weaknesses, keeping in mind that of course you do want to be as honest as possible. If you're not being honest with yourself at the very least, then it's not really going to give you any benefits. So make sure that you actually are completely transparent with yourself. And then the next step is to ask a friend. Ask people that are close around with you, your closest associations that know you, right? Get their input and their perspective. You'll notice that sometimes they may notice you do certain things very well, and they may also mention certain things that you may not necessarily do as well. You want to take both into consideration and really reflect on them, and really again just focus on which ones you think resonate. Look back at your list and your initial assessments of yourself, and really think to yourself if there was something that you may have misassessed, or if there is something that you may have missed. Take all of that into consideration when you're confirming and you're identifying each good thing and each bad thing that you're doing. So another thing that you can do is take a strengths test. By doing so, you can easily identify what are some things that you're doing good and what are some things that you could be doing better. Now, with this, just like how before I mentioned to take into consideration your own assessments of yourself, take into consideration the assessments of your friends, also take into consideration the assessments of this test. Take everything into consideration and really identify and solidify what is it that you're doing good and what is it that you can improve. That is, of course, the constant theme of this whole video, is to reflect, be able to adjust, reflect, adjust, and be able to eventually solidify everything into concrete. From there, move forward. Okay, so how to properly capitalize on your strengths. So a big important part is to think to yourself about your successes that you had in a certain category that you're working on, or in whatever projects that you are currently into. Now, the big important part within this is that once you identify what you are doing great, identify what are the things that are contributing towards that success. So, for example, if let's say that you are playing basketball, you notice it from a certain distance, you can throw the ball and shoot into the hoop, and it oftentimes makes it. Try to redo that multiple times so that you can reinforce that. Now, if you also notice it, maybe the positioning in which you throw the ball, if you notice it, of course, it's one certain way or a couple of different ways, they have a higher increase in the ball actually going into the net, then of course try to reestablish that. Right? You identify, okay, so this time I actually hit the ball I actually threw the ball into the hoop. You identify, okay, what was it that helped me do that, right? I noticed that when I'm from this distance and I was doing it, I had more success. Okay, let me keep on trying it from this distance. Okay, I noticed that the way that I would jump, that when I would jump like this or whatever it was, that I would have more success. Identify those and start to reincorporate them as much as possible so that you can re-solidify on that encouragement, on that positive encouragement on what you are doing great at. When you're doing this, the best thing, of course, is to think about, again, the things that you're doing the best at, the things that you're doing good at, and what you're trying to incorporate, so that you can reinforce that. Remind yourself of the things that you're doing well at, right? Emphasize on that fact, not necessarily to boast or anything. You just tell it to yourself, you mention it to yourself, okay, I did that pretty well, good job, right? Now, this can also be done when you're in a team as well. Now, most people, when they go into a meeting, right, they are so used to identifying the problems, right? A problem-solving mentality. We're changing our mentality from a problem-solving mentality up to again, appreciative inquiry mentality. With that being said, in a situation where there is a group of people and you are leading a team, and at the end of the meeting, I would recommend asking them, what is something that throughout this meeting that we actually did very well? You'll notice that at the beginning especially, people will oftentimes say the things that they didn't do well, right? And that's because they are stuck in that problem-solving mentality. So you're going to need to help guide them through that process. You're going to need to just help them get into more of the positive mind frame. So let's say, for example, that they mentioned there was a lot of interrupting, right? You would take that situation and ask them, okay, so when was it a time in maybe this meeting or a previous meeting where we had been a great listener and we gave the other person the time of day, right? And you would reflect, you would identify that moment. Once you identify that moment, you'll take into consideration all the circumstances that contribute towards you appreciating the other person enough to give them that time of day to speak, right? So you notice it, okay, when they were speaking, I was fully present, right? I was fully engaged in what they were trying to communicate. I was also trying to be understanding of what their perspective was, right? You notice all these similarities that you were doing when you were having the positive aspect, right? And that's what you try to strive for. You try to bring that up and you reinforce that. And it is great, again, because when you are enforcing it, especially with other people, enforcing the good, it has a positive psychological effect to it. In comparison comparison, when you tell somebody you're doing bad at this and you're doing this and this and this and this, it just tends to have more of a negative results if you're constantly going over the negative, unless they specifically advise you to identify the things that they're doing negative. Just be careful with that, because even that can go a little bit wrong. I've also learned through my own personal experience. So just gave you guys a couple different examples as to how you guys can use appreciative inquiry, how you guys can identify your strengths, your weaknesses, and how to properly capitalize on your strengths. I gave it in a more general sense, and I gave examples so that you guys can try to use it within your own and really self-reflect. How is it that you guys can have that same thought process within your life? Now, I hope you guys enjoyed. I will actually be posting more frequently now. I will be posting one video every single week, so be super excited for that. Let me know in the comments what you want to have talked about. What types of tips, advice, perspective can I give? Again, so you guys do not miss on any videos moving forward, make sure to click on that subscribe button, and I will catch you guys later. Again, love you guys. Stay grateful. Catch you guys later.